Hi, you're listening to She Shield, your one-stop pod for all topics personal safety. I'm your host, Sophia, and my goal is to help educate women and men on concealed carry, martial arts, and all things self-defense. Today, we have Annette Evans of On Her Own on the podcast. Long overdue, but better late than never. So glad she's here. Annette, I would love for you to go ahead and just introduce yourself to the listeners.
Hi, Sophia. I am so excited to be here. I've heard great things. I know a lot of my friends have been on the show, so yay, I'm finally here. My name is Annette Evans. I'm the founder of On Her Own. On Her Own is a place where we talk about all of the things that we need to worry about when we're women who are on our own, because every woman in the world has some moment when they don't have somebody they can rely on. They don't have a parent, a partner, a sibling, anything, anybody, and they have to figure out how to survive on their own, whether it's from, the stranger in the alleyway that we're all afraid of, or, sometimes from ourselves. And as long as she's right here, I'm going to introduce you all to Tuna. People who have seen me on other podcasts will have met her before, and she'll be wandering around, with her opinions as well.
Hi, Tuna. Absolutely. If you're listening and you're like, I want to see that cat, you can go to the Instagram. I'll post podcast highlights. And of course, the Patreon has more of that. So thank you for introducing yourself, Annette. I'm so happy you're here. I would love for you to tell us your timeline of your self-defense training, everything from hand-to-hand, force-on-force, concealed carry, competition. Just take it away.
Oh, we could be here for a while. I'll try to do the shortest version I can.
No, take your time.
When I finished law school, I decided that I wanted to finally learn how to shoot a gun. And my now ex-husband had shot in high school a little bit for his high school rifle team, had gone on a work trip with his work buddies, and they went to the range. And I'm like, you went to the range. I want to go to the range. And I learned how to shoot a gun, and it was amazing, and I loved it. And when it used to be our date night, our date morning, whatever it was, we'd go to the range, we'd go get a meal, and it was super fun. And I went down this whole journey of like, well, if I know how to shoot a gun, I'd feel really silly if I didn't know how to defend myself with it. Well, if I know how to shoot a gun and I bought my own gun finally, how exciting. I'm taking it back and forth to the range with me. I'd feel really dumb if I, was attacked on the way to the range, however unlikely that might be. Or I have to cross state lines. I live near a state line. It was easier to cross over into the other state to get back to my state to go to the range. Oh, now I have to learn about this whole concealed carry permit thing so that I can do that and stop for dinner because remember, this is state night. So then it was, Well, if I have a concealed carry permit, I should learn how to carry a gun, and went down this whole road. And I'll be honest, I wasn't a very good shooter. And I discovered this when I learned how to draw a gun from holster and learned that the only place that I could practice was by going to competition, going to like an IDPA match or USPSA match or something like that. And I went, and they're not really sure I showed up at the same match as everyone else. IDPA is, scored by time, and you'd have like first place would be like, 35 seconds. And then last place would be like 70 seconds. And then Annette would be at like 150 seconds. It was really bad. But okay. I loved it. And it was terrible. Yes. I loved it. And I decided to stick with it and get better. I actually went back to a match that I started at. I kept shooting until it went away. And I did go back and win that match a couple of times. So there's hope for all people.
Yes, absolutely. I need that right
now. We can all get better. Competitive shooting was my life for many years. It was something I really, really enjoyed doing. I got super heavy into it. I was traveling for matches. My ex-husband and I ran a monthly match at our local club. I started shooting I was a sponsored shooter for a little while. I even wrote a book about dry fire. This was the thing. And then at a certain stage of my life, we were looking at opening a range. And I'm like, well, I can't do this all with competitive shooters. I need to learn more about this defensive side of the house. The first class I took in that space was Craig Douglas's Edge Weapon Overview. Any of you who have been in this world knows that is jumping into the deep end and then some. Yes. I don't know that it was the smartest thing I've ever done. It is certainly the most life-changing thing I have ever done. I am 4 years and 11 months out from my first EWO. And I know this because I've been thinking a lot about what I've done in those 5 years. I went from not knowing what an underhook was, not knowing about head pressure, none of that, to I'm currently a 4-stripe blue belt in Brazilian Jiu-Jitsu. I'm taking VCAST in a couple of weeks here. I've taken all the rest of Craig's classes a couple of times. I've taken classes from the entire rest of the ShivWorks collective, including the late Dr. William April, who I miss dearly. And this is what I do now. Like, I do it all. I try to do it all. You know, shooting was where I started with it. Combatives kind of came into my life a little bit later. And now I'm like, well, why can't a girl have it all? Why can't I do it all? It's a little rough on, you know, my time, but we all have to make sacrifices.
Absolutely. So you're incredible. Oh my goodness. I am striving to be where you are. So thank you for sharing your journey. When it comes
Anybody can do it.
Yes, absolutely. There's so many places I want to travel and so many classes I want to purchase. I'm starting to make like a calendar for this year on just the classes I want to take. So yes, I feel that absolutely. I would love for you to talk about, I'm actually in this spot right now. I am kind of torn between wanting to fill my time with competition training and wanting to go do ECQC again and alike classes. For someone kind of in that boat of wanting to find a good balance, what would you recommend?
Man, that's such a hard question, right? One thing I really think is important is to remember that we're all here for when you're ready for it, right?
Right.
Whenever I'm at the gym, when I go to jiu-jitsu, you know, we always have somebody who's coming back, right? There's always somebody who's coming back from an injury, from traveling, from life, especially now post-pandemic. And the reminder has always been is jiu-jitsu is always here for you. Well, combatives is always here for you. Maybe it won't be that exact class with that exact instructor, but there's others. Competitive shooting is always going to be here for you. I mean, obviously, in this world, we're all a little worried about our gun rights and things like that. But I think in terms of planning out your training and planning out your focus is, what are you interested in right now? What do you have the resources to do right now? And don't worry so much about the FOMO, because we're still here for you when you're ready.
I love that. Thank you. That's a wonderful message. Because at the end of the day, you're going to do what you do in your own timeline. So I love that. It's a good reminder. I'm definitely going to listen back to this episode when I need that reminder. So I would love for you. I have so many places I want to go with everything you just said. I have so many notes already. The first thing I want to talk about is actually first or second time I've heard of you, Annette. You come up so much. It's crazy. If your ears are just like constantly burning, that's why. But the first or second time I heard of you was actually at ECQC. I took my Filster Enigma to test it out, you know, even though it's, you know, been so, you know, backed up by everyone. But I took it to kind of test out how I was wearing it and with my gun. And I loved it. And I talked to Craig and he mentioned that you did an ECQC in the flashbang holster. So I'd love to hear about that experience if you don't mind sharing.
Yes. So for those of you who aren't familiar, the flashbang bra holster was invented by Lisa Looper probably about 10, 12 years ago now. It's been a bit. And what it does, it's a clamshell that goes over the top of the gun, and then it clips to your bra. So it kind of sits right underneath and between your breasts. It's really innovative. It's so different from every other method of carry. And of course, there's been a lot of suspicion around it because, well, it's a women's self-defense product. It's attached to the bra. How could this possibly be good? And I looked at it, and full disclosure, I'm friends with Lisa. And let me get back to that in a little bit. I am friends with Lisa, but I looked at it and I went, well, I mean, it's a hard shell. It covers the trigger guard, it retains the firearm, and it's securely attached to a thing that every woman in the world knows that when you have that good bra on, it's not going anywhere. So I'm like, well, it seems to fit the elements of a safe holster. What's up with it?
Right.
And when I had this opportunity to do this series with Carl at In Range of looking at women's self-defense products, I didn't want to just go out there and be like, well, I know this product's bad and let me show how it's bad. Like, no, I've got this product. Let's see if it's good or bad. Let's put it through some real testing. And I couldn't think of anything harder to do than to take it to ECQC. Because if it's going to be effective in a fight, if it's going to be fast enough, if it's, you know, it's not competition shooting, but if it's going to be fast enough, if it's going to be effective enough, if it can be safe in a fight, ECQC is where we find out. So it's very, very fortunate that I texted Craig and I'm like, hey, I got this idea. And he's like, sure, I don't see anything at heart that makes this fundamentally unsafe to try. You've done ECQC before. It's not like I'm not familiar with your ability to manage yourself on the line in this class, so give it a try. So I texted Lisa. I'm like, so I want to really, really pressure test the flashbang, and I don't think it's been done before, and I have some ideas of how it's going to turn out, but I'm not really sure. Normally, I would just go buy some product from you and just test it out, but I needed a flashbang that I could use with what I used was the CERT CC, the CERT like mini compact pistol. So I needed a flashbang made specifically for that, in case we wouldn't be able to use Sims with a J-frame or something along those lines. So I had to get Lisa involved, and she says, here's the gear. Let me know the answer is, I don't care either way, because I want to know.
Yeah.
I'm like, all right, you're already like, we were friends before, I liked you before, but now I really respect you even more because you weren't invested in this has to look really good on camera. You were invested in, let's find out. Because if it's not good in a fight, we should know that. It doesn't mean it's a bad product, but maybe it means we have to do different things when we're carrying with that method to make sure that we can remain safe.
Yes.
So, off to ECQC. Craig says, you can do live fire with this if you want. We'll just stick you all the way at the end of the line because the gun sits across your chest this way with the muzzle pointing to the side. It's a lot like a shoulder holster where the muzzle points in a different direction. But we were able to make it work safely, including, one-handed reholster and all the other things I would expect to do out of a regular holster. This is all in the video within range. And then we went into the EVOs. And instead of using Sims for the EVOs, I did use that CERT pistol, but we could see the laser. We could see what was going on with it. And the question was, can you get to it in an entangled fight? If somebody is, on top of you, arms around you, touching you, are you able to get the gun out when it's attached to your bra? The answer is yes. There's something to be said about, yes, I have some jujitsu, I have some background, I've been through the coursework, I have the skills to do it. But the question wasn't, does it only work if you have a certain level of ability? The question is, can it work at all? And the answer is absolutely yes, it can work at all. Now, if somebody wants to do further work with it, I'd love to see a woman who has less background take a flashbang to class, take a flashbang and see if they can do it after they've just been through, ECQC for the first time or 6 months of jujitsu, something with a little bit less background. But, the proof of concept is there now. And that's probably one of the pieces of work I'm most proud of because it was proof too that a women's self-defense product doesn't have to be second class. This is a great product. And I know a bunch of guys who are kind of jealous that we have that option because I've used it to carry 2 guns places. I put one under my bra, to carry 2 legitimate guns places, one under my bra, one appendix.
Wow.
It's really great. I told the guys they too can wear a bra, but they didn't listen to me.
I wonder why. That's just so unfortunate. I'm just kidding. No, that's amazing. I'm so impressed by you. And when you said someone with less experience needs to do it, I'm just taking some notes. Maybe I'll do that. I'm kind of getting to a point where I feel like that. Well, first of all, I am a blue belt that stopped training after I got my blue belt because of the nose issues we talked about before this. And if you haven't been listening for a while, this is your first episode here. I essentially broke my nose 5 times throughout Muay Thai and Jiu-Jitsu and had 2 nose surgeries. So I have a glass nose. There's the short version. And yes, the surgery hurt way worse than the nose breaking. I'll put that there and leave it. But essentially, I would love to go back and take ECQC. I've heard taking it once is just you survive it. That's the goal. And then going back, just it's a whole new course. You pick up everything that you were too nervous to hear the first time. So I promise I'm planning on going back. I feel like one of those people who like the blue belts that kind of drop out right afterwards. I've only been once, but I learned so much. It changed my perspective on self-defense training so greatly that I just can't help but bring it up. So I would love to test a different holster system. I hadn't even considered that until now. So I love that idea. I'll have to do it.
We could talk about, I still have the gear that I use, so we can talk about it.
Amazing. That would be great.
There's
Yes. I actually just ordered, just because I'm seeing it everywhere, the Liberty Band and mini tuck holster from Crossbreed. So I'm not necessarily recommending it for those of you listening, because I haven't tested it, but I have ordered it because I do love the idea. The concept looks pretty cool. It's, as far as like safety parameters, it looks very safe. There's a cover on the trigger. It looks like it has great retention when I've seen people do like draws from it. So I'm excited to like bring that to the forefront, and, you know, even testing like a belly band setup to see how it holds up would be kind of interesting. And that kind of brings me to the next question I have for you. I know you are starting to talk to people about how they should choose their tools. So do you have a suggested strategy for that?
For choosing your...
like self-defense tools, anywhere from holsters to knives, and I'm ready for it.
So there's so much that goes into that. You know, the first thing is, obviously, you can't just go, if you're going to go listen to recommendations from other people, you got to really vet who they are and why they're experts. You know, there is a self-defense product out there right now that has been hiring influencers to show why it's a wonderful thing. And not a single one of those influencers I've seen has any background at all in self-defense. So why are you listening to them when your life could be on the line? And just because they have a big following doesn't necessarily mean they've done the work of figuring out what works and doesn't work. You know, I know that I'm very careful about disclosing relationships with various people as well as I can, various companies that I've worked with. Not everybody is, and you have to think about, you know, how does that play into what they're recommending to you? So, you know, I think the first step is you got to do some research, and you have to be skeptical about the research you're doing. The next thing is you need a tool that's not going to hurt you. Like, this is kind of like baseline here, right? Like, whatever you choose, I don't want it to hurt you. We could talk about next about whether or not it's going to hurt the other person or stop the other person who's attacking you, but it shouldn't hurt you to begin with. So like I'm playing with like a trainer knife right here because I've been doing some folding knife work lately. And one of the things with folding knives that are out there, some of them have a lock mechanism where if you put a lot of force on that blade, they're going to close over your hand. I don't know about you, but I think that this would be a poor outcome.
Yes.
If I'm deciding I'm going to use this folding knife for self-defense and it closes over my fingers. So you want to choose tools that aren't going to hurt you. And then you need to choose tools that are actually going to be effective against other people, right? The self-defense ring that's out there, and I have some videos on that. It's like this little like tiger claw ring. And I'm like, is it really going to stop somebody else? It's like 1.5 inches of serrated shovel blade that sticks out the wrong direction from your knuckle. Like, I mean, it's probably not going to hurt you. So it passes that first test. But is it going to like actually stop somebody else? Wasp spray is another one. We have all heard, use wasp spray and spray it on your attacker. Like, does that actually stop human beings? Like, no, it doesn't, right? Human beings aren't bugs, no matter how terrible of a human being they are. So wasp spray doesn't stop them. It won't hurt you, probably, but it won't hurt them enough either. But part of thinking about, is that tool going to work is what skills do you need to make it work? How many of you know somebody who carries a gun who can't hit the broadside of a barn?
Oh my gosh.
So many. Calling you out right now. What do you think that gun's going to do for you when the bad guy's coming after you? Like, really, really think hard about, and I'm not saying don't carry that gun. I'm saying work on that skill. You can do that. Dry fire is a thing. You can go to the range. You can take classes. We can recommend lots of great instructors for that. So learn is the tool going to be effective in your hands? It's not just, is the tool going to be effective in, my hands or Sophia's hands? It's going to be effective in your hands with your skill set, with your lifestyle, with everything else that goes with you. I know people who carry a gun and a knife and a light and a this and a pepper spray and blah, 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 and all these other things that I'm like, I'm little. I can't get all that on me. I don't carry a purse. I can't tote that all around with me. Those tools and that setup and that loadout might work really, really well for my buddy. It doesn't mean it's the right choice for me. So I need to pick tools that aren't going to hurt me, pick tools that are going to affect the other person enough to make them want to stop, or force them to stop, even better, and that are able to do that in my hands.
Absolutely. No, thank you for sharing that. And one of the products I've seen you talk about recently are concealed carry leggings. So, and don't feel you crack me up. I'm having trouble not laughing. I love the way you explain things. But essentially, I am someone that has talked about them on my page. I'm going to be clear, though, to kind of break it up. There are two types. There's, in my opinion, unless, tell me if I'm wrong, there might be another one, but I see it as like one usually comes with like an inside the waistband pocket that you can put some type of kind of trigger guard into, and then you put your gun into that pocket inside the trigger guard. And then the other one is like concealed carry leggings for competition training, where you wear a belt and you have your outside the waistband holster. Personally, I go with the second version more, and I have in competitions. The only problem I've had with that is depending on the brand and the fabric, they can be a little see-through.
And they start sagging sometimes with all that weight on them.
Exactly. Yes. So I think the one, though, you were referring to is the inside the waistband version. And of course, they have like the options for you to carry appendix and behind the back. So I'd love for you to talk about that, and what can someone do to test their own, say someone listening right now has those leggings at home. What can they do to like test that product themselves to see if it's actually effective?
So with that style of legging, that's pockets that you put a gun into, I'm going to say that almost universally, without some modification, they're unsafe. Full stop. For a variety of reasons. But there are some things you can do to check and to make them safer. So you don't have to throw them out. First of all, they might be fantastic leggings, and you might just want to wear them as leggings and then find some other way to secure your gun to them. Like you can use the Filster Enigma, you can use, there's some clips that are a little bit better for complete holsters. But what happens with those concealed carry leggings is a couple of things. One of them is that the fabric that is outside, that's a pocket where your gun goes into, triggers can be pulled through them. And that's why a lot of companies and a lot of folks have gone to, well, I need a trigger guard. That's cool, except that your trigger guard needs to actually stay on your trigger until you remove your gun from the trigger guard. So like some of these, like for a while there, I don't know if this is still being recommended, I try not to look too closely, folks were suggesting using like a credit card or another kind of card in an outside pocket and then putting the gun behind it, and that would keep you from being able to press the trigger from the fabric. And I kind of had two objections to that. One of them is that the backside is a thing, and we all know that you're pulling up your leggings and your thumb gets behind or something like that. That happens. Or like grabby little fingers from a kid. Like you don't know, they're not only going to stay on the outside of your waistband. The other thing is that card may not actually stay in place in front of your trigger as it moves around. And I'm sorry for anybody who's listening who can't see the weird hand motions I'm doing to show that. So, it may actually itself catch into the trigger guard. The other thing it does is it holds the pocket open in a way where your gun is more likely to fall out. So you really want like an actual trigger guard or an actual holster. You can take an actual holster with a good solid clip. I like the DCC clips. There's some others out there that folks like, that attaches like inside the pocket or to the waistband. Then you just have to watch out for whether or not those leggings are sturdy enough to hold the weight of your gun. And the clip is sturdy enough to really grab onto that fabric, and preferably not fail if you tug on that really, really hard. And some of the clips are actually designed to let go to not destroy your leggings. Personally, I'd rather destroy my leggings than have my gun drop out, but I mean, I guess you do you, except for the part where your gun drops out and hurts somebody that I love. So think about that. The other thing that happens with them is, sausage. like sausage is inside a casing and there's meat inside there and you like squeeze at the bottom of the casing and stuff comes out the open end.
Yes.
So this is a problem with like the old school belly bands and the still current belly bands and these concealed carry leggings. You got the soft pocket and you stick something hard in there and then you're moving around all day. What comes out of that pocket? Just like sausage.
Yeah.
So they're just really, I know the idea. I know why they're so attractive. I'm wearing leggings right now myself, right? They're comfortable. It's what we wear. We want to carry with what we wear. We don't want to dress around the gun, which is a BS concept anyway, in a lot of ways. But it's not the best solution. You know, there's just a lot of things that can go wrong. You know, you don't have your gun safely secured in that piece of clothing. And really, you got to find a better way. And there's so many better ways out there, even if it's as simple as getting a leggings with the belt loops. And I think Vicandi is doing those leggings in a way where you can use an inside the waistband holster with where their belt loops sit on their leggings. You can use a regular holster, just like a regular pair of pants. There's other leggings out there that have belt loops. You can get a really, really good clip and make sure that you're using a small enough, light enough gun that it's not going to tip over or fall out or make your pants sag. So please, please go with one of those and save those leggings from just being leggings. With lots of extra pockets, that's not a bad thing. Just use those pockets for other things.
Absolutely. I love the way you explained all of that. I don't think I've found such an efficient way to say it, so I really appreciate you explaining.
Had a little practice.
Absolutely. And yes, I'm very lucky to have you on to talk about it today. So what I've told my sisters and like the people close to me who I've like taken enough time to like explain this to, because sometimes in DMs I don't always have that time. So I usually have like a copy and pasting. What I usually say is like Vicandi, like belted leggings with a belt and then a holster inside the waistband with good clips is number one.
Great option.
And then number two, if you just like have to, I do like the Alexo pockets because they have like a 3-layer fabric. So it doesn't ruin the legging to clip your discreet carry concept clips on that fabric, but they do move throughout the day. So I have to check my holster. I'll take either like extra bathroom breaks or I'll just kind of like tap myself, which is not really like the best thing to do. But if I feel like I have a moment where I can kind of like tap or I can like rub my arm and see where it's at, I can get an idea of like how far it's moved just because I've done that enough. But I actually I have a standard Co USA. It's their Geronimo 2.0 holster. I tuck, and I don't work with them. I just like them. I use them. I tuck that holster into that pocket and then I use DCC clips. But like she mentioned, they absolutely do move, even though that is like an awesome setup for what the leggings provide, they still move. So yeah. And I love what you said about the credit card thing. Cause have you seen what they came out with? It's like a little pocket. It almost looks like a wallet. Yes.
It's like a taco. Actually, let me do you one better. I need a cert pistol now. So this is a cert pistol. So not actually a real gun.
Amazing.
Shoots lasers. The thing with the credit card, I'm like, do I have a credit card on here? I have a business card. The thing with putting a card over there is what happens when your gun is shifted around in the pocket and the card is here.
Mm-hmm.
Maybe not as safe as we thought it was. And then when we have like the taco, there's nothing that's really stopping the gun from moving in and out of the taco. And the taco itself can hold the pocket open enough that the whole thing just starts tipping out.
Yes.
So not a huge fan of it. I think like in the true pocket carry context, like in like pants pockets, like the hip, like a normal like jeans pocket, those have a slightly different application. And even so, most of those are more of a pouch kind of configuration than like a taco with 3 sides open.
Yeah, Absolutely. That was a great analogy. I remember getting them and doing a video on like how it should look as far as like how the brand intended for it. But I haven't done any force on force training to back up whether or not that's a good mode of carry. So I've archived that video until I can figure that out. Your post got me really thinking. And I want to be more prepared in that
I
area.
recommend burpees.
So, burpees? Oh,
I'm not kidding.
Yes. Okay.
We don't even need to go all the way to force on force sometimes to find these things failing. My fairly infamous Lethal Lace article and videos, I literally like sat down and stood up a bunch of times. I like did some burpees. I squatted down. I sprinted a little bit. Some of this stuff fails really, really early. And then you don't have to find somebody who wants to fight you.
Note. Yes. Oh, that's a good point. That's a good point with the glass nose. I appreciate that idea. I actually got one of my personal training clients to start jiu-jitsu. Her and her friend had gotten her started doing it. And she was like, will you go to my first class with me? And I was like, absolutely. But the whole time I was like staying like really far from her. And I was like, just move really slowly with me. And I had her work with other people because I was like, I can't be a good partner right now. But yes, I love that idea. I feel like a door just opened for me. So for anyone listening who's like not like to the point where you're ready to do force on force, that is such a good idea. Make sure you test that out and try that. It's better than nothing for sure.
And there's a lot of,
as far as
the other thing I'd recommend for folks is having a blue gun. This is also just a solid chunk of plastic that's shaped like one of my guns. Having a blue gun that matches your gear lets you test out your gear in a much safer way. Because rather than putting a loaded gun into an untested carry method, you could stick your blue gun in there and go about your day. And if that blue gun falls out, or if that blue gun, shifts around in a way that's uncomfortable or problematic, you'll know in a much safer manner because the blue gun is an inert piece of plastic.
Yes. Absolutely. And they have a couple options. This one's like the non-weighted option, but they have some weighted options. If you're, is that weighted? Solid. I could tell you, it was like ka-thunk, and then you picked it up. Yes.
So
that's even better. I think it's a little bit more expensive, but.
Sorry, I keep interrupting you. I'm like, all these ways to see if something's safe in a way that doesn't endanger you.
What? No, please interrupt me. I want you to go on. I always have questions prepared in case it's, you start finishing towards the end, but I want you to go on as much as you can about this. Are there any other products that you would like to talk about today?
Nothing in particular. I think that I am always skeptical of products that say things like just or always or easy. Okay. And I say this as somebody who pushes pepper spray hard. I have a financial relationship with Palm Pepper Spray. I love their product. I carry it myself. I mean, this is like my personal one that goes everywhere with me kind of thing. Or the current personal one that goes everywhere with me. And yes, I call it easy. I call it very, very effective and all that. But you'll see a lot of products out there that are like, just do this. And then magical things occur and bad guys don't hurt you. There's no self-defense product or strategy in the world that is 100%. Like, full stop. Like, there's just nothing that is 100% all of the time under all circumstances. So if somebody claims that their product is, then I would be super skeptical. Even pepper spray, not 100%. It's pretty close, and it when it doesn't work, it sometimes still works for you in other ways, but it's not 100%. And if they say you just have to do this easy thing, like, sorry everyone, self-defenses work. Like there are no simple, easy answers. So you're gonna need to be prepared for if they're like, oh, odds are pretty good that they're not going to be really, really good. And then if you're wondering, well, I saw, my favorite influencer. Well, you just heard me talk about, I really like Palm, let me disclose my financial relationship with them. Does your favorite influencer, are they clear about disclosing their financial relationship with what they're recommending? And how does that play into their recommendations? Do they have a financial relationship with this company because they love their product and win-win for everybody? Or, hey, I'm going to say great things about this because they're writing me a check. And does the person who's recommending it, this is how we find out about things, right? This is how I find out about cool new guns. This is how I find out about cool new tools, is somebody recommends them to me, but are they actually qualified to say something about that? And one of the things, Sophia, that I loved hearing from you is you're like, I got to this point with doing the podcast and realizing like, I don't really know enough to know what I'm talking about. So that, like, to me, that's a great sign, because that means you're going to go to somebody, and when you say something, you're going to be like, hey, I'm either really sure I know what I'm talking about, or I found this person who I am confident is really sure what they're talking about. So, vet your sources. It's not just, well, they've got 100,000 Instagram followers, they must know what they're doing. Like, maybe right. Not so much. So the other thing I look for is whenever anybody recommends something to me, whether it's an influencer, a manufacturer, an instructor, whatever else, is I'm looking for people who understand what the consequences of screwing up are. Your life is on the line. And when I teach, when I influence, whatever that means, when I do all this, I'm always thinking about, like, if I recommend the wrong thing to you in the wrong way, that might mean that you die, and that's on me. And anybody who's recommending products to you, if they have that understanding that it's on them, I think that that's probably somebody who's worth at least paying a little bit more attention to, because you're worth it, right? Like, at the end of the day, you don't carry a gun, you don't carry a knife, you don't carry pepper spray, you don't carry, I don't know, a self-defense ring or anything because, like, you want to die, like, you want to live. So make all these decisions with that gravity, right? Don't screw up. Don't work with people. Don't listen to people who think that screwing up is, well, that sucks. Like, no, like, somebody's going to die, and it might be you. And I know that's really depressing and it's really sad. And I hope we talk about something happy and laughing about it soon. But that's what underlies all of this. It's fun. It's interesting. It's enjoyable. When we train, a lot of us love training. But at the end of the day, it's about living and understanding that we can't screw up, because if we screw up, we might die, or you might die.
An amazing point. And yes, while it's difficult to talk about and hear, it absolutely needs to be said. And that is why this podcast was started in the first place. So thank you for taking it there. And that reminded me of the fact that I get comments all the time that say, like, oh, you're paranoid, or, you need to chill, something like that. And I've always responded with, like, hey, man, if you're at the capacity where you're not willing to learn more, like, maybe don't dampen other people's, capacity. But an even deeper response would be, like, there are so many consequences to not being prepared enough and just stopping where you're comfortable, that you're actually putting yourself in more danger than if you had no gun at all on you. So I love that take. It definitely grounded me. And I'm definitely someone who does this. Like, I get really caught up in the whole Instagram followers and entertaining content that sometimes I get to this point where I kind of hit a wall and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? And I have to ground myself. And it always goes back to, like, why I started in the first place. And it goes back to the women I've helped along the way that, like, truly and honestly needed help and told me about their situations. So I'm really glad you took it there. Feel free to take it there anytime.
It's a pet message of mine to all of my peers, for people like you, people who have been, who are just, even people who are just like, well, I'm just media, I'm just writing this review or whatever. I'm like, yes, but somebody's reading that review. And what does that mean to them? Somebody might choose to carry this gun or not carry this gun because of what you said. So, I'm not saying you can only recommend the best things in the world, but be honest. Last year, Beretta asked me to do some media, write some stuff about the APX A1 carry. And I'm looking at them like, there's things I like about this gun. I personally carry my APX A1 carry. Like, I trust it that much. But there's some big downsides to it for a lot of people. So you realize I have to be honest about that so that people can make the best choice. It's important. It's been kind of a crusade of mine, as I've been around for a hot minute now and seen a lot of people recommend a lot of things that aren't safe. And at the end of the day, we all want to go home safe, or we want to be home safe. So what do we do to make that more possible?
So I really want to ask you this now. So I sometimes have trouble recommending carry to women when they don't train adequately. Even my partner, and I struggle with this, and trying not to tell him what to do, but I definitely have expressed to him, like, hey, man, I love that you're caring and that you want to do that, but like, let's go shoot together soon. Like, let's maybe work on some draws together at home. And he's always incredibly receptive to that. But I've had trouble in the past. Like, I've wanted to tell people, like, you know what, why don't you just like not carry right now until you're ready? How do you find that balance of like, should I carry now or should I wait until I've taken ECQC, but that's 3 months away? Like, what would you say to people that are in that predicament?
I mean, I hate gatekeeping. I really do. Like, I don't want to tell people, like, you're not ready to take care of yourself. You're not ready to take care of your life. I think we have to be realistic about it. And probably the best way to turn people off is to tell them they're not good enough or they're stupid or something else that's just not very kind. We really need to meet people where they are. I need to meet you where you are. And if you're where you are is, right, I'm comfortable carrying a gun, I might help you explore, are you carrying a gun in a way that is safe for you and the people around you? Step one, right? If you are safe, if you're not going to hurt anybody because of the way you carry a gun, go ahead and carry a gun. I would like to be honest with you. I'd like you to understand that there are limitations to what that gun is going to do for you. You know, like, you're not magically going to become a better marksman, markswoman, because, you know, there's pressure that somebody's running at you. You're not magically going to be better at shooting them. So I'd like you to be realistic about it. I'd like you to start understanding when you do and don't have the right to use certain tools, like the legal right. You know, we're talking about what's legally correct, not necessarily what's morally correct here. You know, if legally you can't shoot that person, I would really like you to not shoot that person. And I think you would really like to not shoot that person. So understanding that. But if you're not going to hurt yourself or the people that you love or the innocent people around you, I'm not going to say don't do it. But I want to be very, very realistic about what you can expect. Kathy Jackson, I don't know if you know, you've run across her yet. Kathy is like an OG of the women's defensive pistol world. And I was lucky enough to have been mentored by her for many years. She's off like snorkeling through tropical islands right now, and I'm very jealous. Right? Wow. Let's all retire that way. So Kathy reminded me once that there's a dirty secret in the self-defense industry. The vast majority of successful defensive gun uses are by people with zero training and substandard tools. It's just the way it is. You know, there's a lot of defensive gun uses that happen because somebody managed to get their gun out from however they were carrying it. And it doesn't mean that it's ideal, but it does happen. What I want to do on the education side, on the training side, is increase the odds in your favor. If you're going to go through all the expense and hassle of carrying a gun, then I want it to be more than a boat anchor for you. I want it to work for you on a better than random chance basis. I want to stack the odds in your favor. But as long as you're being safe about it, you know, like, man, you do you. The odds are actually with you on being successful. I just think that we can do better than rolling the dice on whether or not you're going to be successful. I mean, you should take ECQC anyway, but it's not for everybody.
Oh, yes, anyway. Yes. Absolutely. Nice. Good disclaimer there. Absolutely. I'd like to take my fiance sometime. I think that would be really eye-opening for him, and it'd be a fun, almost like a little date, but with a lot of maybe like bruises and maybe a little bleeding. You never know.
I took my partner to Cecil Birch's Immediate Action Jiu-Jitsu. And I think I heard about it. I think I heard about the aches and pains and the moans for at least 3 months after it. So, you know, you got to be prepared for that. And we didn't even get to the weapons part yet.
Oh, my goodness. I'm sure it's like going canoeing, like a kind of a testament for your relationship.
And it was a little bit more awkward than usual because I was AIing that class, not just taking it too. So it's like, and then you have to listen to me about how to do this.
I see. Right. No, that makes a lot of sense. No, that's awesome. That kind of brings me to my next question. So for people that are in that boat of like not knowing what to do next, which since you mentioned, sorry, actually, I skipped over this. The Cornered Cat is by Kathy Jackson, correct? Okay. Yes. Okay. That's why she sounded familiar. So I will have her book linked in the show notes, which are the notes below the title. But would you like to talk about that? Is that a book you recommend to people?
I still go back to Kathy's website on a fairly regular basis for folks to explain certain concepts to them. Like some of them are just absolutely timeless. Some of them, yeah, they get more dated, but a lot of that material is over 10 years old now. So, but a lot of it is still useful.
Right.
I think that if you are somebody who wants to teach women's self-defense, teach women's defensive shooting, you owe it to yourself to know, to be familiar with Kathy's work, to be familiar with like Gila Hayes, to be familiar with Vicky Farnham. Like these women were the OGs. They were doing it long before the rest of us. There's a couple other ones out there whose names, Lynn Givens is another one, right? They've been doing this for a long time. Have we like moved beyond some of their techniques and some of the things that they're doing? Probably. That's the way it happens. But if you're not familiar with their work, you cannot stand on their shoulders, and we all stand on their shoulders.
A lot of sense. Yeah, I'm making a note to go and look into more of her work. So thank you for that. Absolutely. And that will be linked below if you guys just want to scroll down under this episode and click on that. And you wrote the dry fire primer. That has come up in episodes quite a bit. I would love for you to talk about what encouraged you to write that.
The dry fire primer. So for a while there, I was doing a ton of dry fire. And as you can tell, I love talking about the things that I'm nerdy about. And there was a period where I was just writing a lot and posting a lot and talking a lot about dry fire. And I realized I was saying the same things over and over again. So I like collected them into this little book. I think it's like 80 pages or something like that. It's a short little book. And it is a whole run through of like, how do you get ready to dry fire? How do you set up your dry fire space? What are like the real basics? You know, like what's a par timer? And there's people listening to this in 2023 going, how do you not know what a par timer is? Like, I'm sorry, guys, like 6 years ago, it was a little bit, less obvious. And there's still new people coming up who've never heard this term.
Right.
So this is like the beginner's 101 guide to dry fire, but it also covers other aspects of it that you can use. Like how do you dry fire for skill improvement? How do you dry fire for different areas of your life? So what I tell people is it's a primer. It's intended for you to buy and look at it and like, go, okay, now I know how to use these other books that have all these dry fire drills in them. There are no drills in the dry fire primer. That is a common complaint. Like, that's the point. The point is I am not here to give you drills. I'm here to tell you how to do drills. I'm here to tell you how to modify drills, how to come up with drills on your own, but I don't have any drills. For that, Steve Anderson's books are great. Ben Steger's books are great. Mike Seeklander's books are great. They will give you all the drills that you want for dry fire and then some. I'm just going to tell you how to do it. And I felt it was a bit of a missing piece when I wrote the book. I opened Steve's book for the first time and they're like, blah, 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 part-time. I'm like, because of part-time, Steve. How do I pick one? It's like going to the gym and being like, what should I put on a bar to do my first bench press ever? Like, how do I figure out what my 1 rep max is?
Exactly.
It's not actually obvious.
Yes.
Yes.
Actually just got his books. So
I love that cover.
little shout out there. No, it's great. It's timeless. I love it too. It's actually like it's coming back a little bit too right now with all the retro focus. It's very cool. I work with the coach in Ville, Tennessee, and he has homework for me already. So I'm kind of doing that right now. But I've been kind of looking through the book and I'm planning on making that kind of my homework when I move away from this current coach. So yes, awesome recommendations. I will link all of that as well. So for people that are thinking, okay, I want to start dry firing, I don't really know where to start. I know you mentioned those resources, but as far as the order in which people should take classes like self-defense classes, drawing from concealment classes, force on force, and then maybe all the way up to like competition training, is there a particular order you would recommend that to them?
I think that, after you take your basic learn how to shoot classes and perhaps like if your state requires a concealed carry class or like or you plan on carrying a gun, you should learn how to draw from a holster safely. Like those I think are foundational no matter what you want to do. I don't think you have to be at a certain level of shooting before you take many classes. There's some classes where you'll get more out of it as a better shooter. You know, like something like Gabe White's performance pistol class. Like that's going to be, if you have trouble beating the standards that he puts out in the course description, you're not going to get a lot out of the class. He'll work with you as best he can, but you're not going to get that much out of it. That said, I've taken some competition shooting classes where, you know, like, can you hit paper? Okay, we could teach you other things that go around this entire process. So I think that, you know, kind of let's go full circle around. Do what you think is fun. Do what you think is interesting. You know, if your idea is, I just want to learn how to protect myself, I could give you a curriculum. And I think you should take your basic pistol class. I think you should take a basic concealed carry mechanics class. I really, really like John Murphy's FPF training, street encounter skills as sort of a smorgasbord class of everything but the force on force. But there's other classes, and like Armed Parent Guardian from Citizens Defense Research is also kind of a good one in that space, whether or not you have children. And then, you know, maybe you should take a medical class. If you know how to put holes in people, you should know how to patch holes in people. And then maybe you want to take some force on force. Can you be a successful and well-educated concealed carrier without ever taking force on force? I think so. I think that you should at least consider finding a good shooting-based force on force class, scenario class. They are difficult to find. It's hard to keep them well constructed and safe. So, and do you have to do force on force, like hands-on fighting, ECQC, all that other stuff? I think it's extraordinarily instructive. I think I told you, Sophia, before we started, Ewo changed the course of my life. And it got me into jiu-jitsu, which is amazing. So, but do you have to do it? You don't have to. I would encourage you to. I think you'd get a lot out of it, but you don't have to, right? Do what you need to do to stay safe. And remember that at the end of the day, we do all of this to live our lives. So, like, don't burn all of your vacation time going to classes if that's not what you love doing. I mean, I've done it. I've totally had those years where every bit of vacation time was going to a match, going to a class. You know, it was all guns all the time. And I loved doing it. That is not for everybody. And if you want to say, well, I have 2 weeks of vacation this year, I'm going to spend 1 week of it going to classes and 1 week of it going on a cruise. Go on that cruise. Enjoy yourself. Leave the gun at home. You trained so you were able to go on that cruise.
I like that. And that's a good reminder for me as well. My fiance and I sometimes, our schedules are like ships in the night. So I'll like think I have this weekend available and I want to go drive here and take a class, but I'm also so tired and I need to recharge. And like, I think that's just a good reminder for anyone who has that struggle of like, just thinking you have to be going somewhere and learning something and moving for your like weekend to be counted as like worth it.
I mean, if that's what you love to do.
Don't worry, I'm here.
Me too. I had 1 year, I did 390 hours of training. 390 hours of training, working a full-time job.
Wow.
Maybe, I think it was full-time that year, but it was working, you know, at least 30 hours a week plus, you know, travel. And this was all traveling training. Very little of it was local to me. I lived, eat, and breathed training all the time. Like when I was at work, half the time, if I was working from home, I was probably packing or unpacking at the same time or getting my gear ready or whatever else. But I loved it. Right? Like I was doing it because I wanted to learn more. I wanted to refine my skills. I wanted to spend the time with the people I was taking classes with. Like I wasn't doing it because like I had to do it in order to be able to protect myself. So like you don't have to do that. You don't have to make it your life in the ways that like I might have done for parts of my life in order to be like good enough to carry a gun or good enough to protect yourself.
Absolutely. And we had mentioned that you were excited to talk about the full spectrum of personal safety. Is that something you feel like you've gotten to speak on, or is there anything in particular you meant by that?
We've talked about guns. I've been like playing with my knife over, my trainer knife over here. We've talked about all that. Like we've talked about jiu-jitsu because jiu-jitsu are like vegans and CrossFitters. We can't go without talking about it. Made you laugh.
Yes, I was drinking water and nearly spit it out. Yes.
But there's so many other ways that our lives can be challenged and our lives can be threatened. One of the examples I use a lot is flat tire. The first time I had a flat tire by myself was at night, raining on the side of I-95. So that's not a really safe place to be pulled over with a flat. And my now ex-husband, and I promise you this is not why I divorced him, my now ex-husband's phone was turned off. So I'm calling. I'm like, hey, okay. Like I have a flat tire. I'm actually not that far from home. Can you come save me? There was nobody there. I was on my own. Right?
Right.
Do you think that knowing how to manage that flat tire is as important as being able to fight off the guy coming out from the alleyway? Which is more likely to happen to you? Which is as likely to kill you? And I'm not saying, well, you have to learn how to change your own flat. Right. That's certainly an option and probably something we should all know how to do and at least watch the YouTube video before we're on the road, not on the side of a highway at whatever o'clock at night in the dark in the rain. But at the same time, maybe you should have thought ahead. Do I have roadside? Who do I have roadside with? What's their phone number? How long will it take for them to get there? Do I know where I am? If my first choice of person to call isn't available, like my partner or my parent or whatever, is there somebody else I can call? Have I already thought through this problem? So I like to think about that. And then I'm thinking about stuff like finances. You know what's really bad for your personal safety? Not having somewhere to live. Not having something to eat. So when I think about what does it take to be safe, and I'm talking about personal safety and like full spectrum personal safety, full spectrum personal self-defense, think about like, how do I save money so I can make sure I make the rent or the mortgage every single month? Like, what do I need to do to make that happen? Even if it's moving to somewhere cheaper or whatever else it might be. What do I have to do to make sure I eat? And after my divorce, that was a tough one. Single girl living on her own for the first time. Like, you have to like cook or what? And do you think that's important to keeping yourself safe and healthy? As important as the guy in the parking lot at 3:00 in the morning? It's not as sexy. I get that. Right. Like, I ate a lot of peanut butter sandwiches, but it's still an important part of keeping yourself safe. On her own is not just about the guns and the knives and everything else, which I love. You've heard me talk about them for almost an hour now. But it's also about, how do I survive the rest of life? And how do I survive not just the strangers, but the people I know, whether I love them or I don't love them, they're part of my life. How do I survive them? And how do I survive myself?
Absolutely. Yes, I love that you went into that. Part of this podcast is about health and well-being, defense of self, in addition to self-defense. So I love that you took it even further into the financial side, and that's something that you're exactly right. It's not as sexy. It doesn't get as much attention, but it's so true. Behind the scenes, I don't talk about this because it's not as sexy as USPSA, but I've been listening to a lot of podcasts on financial management because I'm getting to a point where I won't be a student anymore, and I don't have that like job through my university that I normally have, and that like almost like safety blanket. So yeah, that's absolutely true. And it's not fun to struggle over those concepts, but it is equally important as knowing how to drop your weapon and protect yourself. I love it. Thank you for going into that. As far as the difference, and I know these are kind of, you can make this as long-winded or short as you would like. I've had a lot of women recently reach out to me about competition shooting, which is scary and exciting all at once. I only tell them what I know, and I tell them who to go to for the rest of the information. But I know how to get started. I'll tell you that. And then pretty much from there, I can't help them anymore. But for women that are kind of, they hear, IPSC and USPSA, and they don't know where to start. Do you have a particular recommendation for which one to go into
first? The one
first?
That's at the closest range that fits with your schedule. Start there. I've been to good IDPA clubs and terrible IDPA clubs, good USPSA, bad USPSA, good outlaw, bad outlaw. It comes down to the people. So don't worry about that. Go to the one that fits your schedule, that fits your life. Try there. If you like it, cool. You found a new home. If you don't, I would encourage you to try again and you'll find your home.
I love that. Yeah, there's only one. I've only been to 3, but there's only one out of the 3 I don't want to return to just because they did not DQ this guy until the last freaking stage. And he had flagged the entire group, including me, twice. And on the third one, finally, it was a different RO. He was like, "You're out." And he was like, "It's the last stage. Why are you doing this?" And the guy was like, "This is not your first flag, though. Like, or one breaking the 180."
You know how I talk about
I remember feeling just so unsafe
like,
the whole time.
Don't get shot at the range is a pretty good part of that.
Right. It is. And I honestly regret not leaving. I guess I thought surely they're going to pull him aside and do something. They didn't. I had way too much faith in.
That's not the way it should be.
Oh, me too. Exactly. And so I just wanted to give an example for anyone listening. If you're like, what do you mean by not good? That's what came to my mind when you said good and bad. Like there is good and bad there.
There's,
yeah.
As long as it's safe and you're safe, like that's all you really need. Whether or not, like, I could go on for days about the rule sets and ROs and like match design styles and everything else like that. But especially when you're new, you're not going to drive 2 hours to a match, and I wouldn't expect you to, and that would actually be kind of crazy. But especially if there's a match that's 15 minutes or half an hour from your house, like go to that one and see how you like it. What's the worst that happens? You don't like it. It's like finding a gym. Like what gym do you join?
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I've been looking through your website as we've been talking about all of your different blog topics to see if there's anything you don't have on here. And you literally have everything. I just want to shout your blog out for anyone who hasn't already clicked the link in the bio or in the show notes. You have a section on self-care, self-defense, life skills, personal safety, and relationships. I mean, is there anything you missed? Do you have a section on cat care? I mean, this is incredible.
I haven't done cats. I should. For folks who are kind of reading along, listening, I have been on a bit of a hiatus from new long-form content as I've been trying to figure a whole bunch of stuff out and take care of a whole bunch of stuff. But I can, in addition to what is on the actual website that's linked below, is go follow me on the various social media channels because you will find bonus content that does not make it to the website. So like Twitter's been a source of amusement and a source of pronouncements lately. Instagram will get a couple of new things here and there. You'll find on my Facebook page, I'll dig something up from the archives that I think is timely or interesting or fits together in a way they didn't when I originally posted them. So yes, please follow my webpage, but all those different social media channels are where you're going to see the most current content right now, and hopefully more on YouTube soon.
That's exciting. No, absolutely. And if you go to her Instagram, you have essentially like mini blogs throughout. So if you're one of those people who likes to get a short amount of information at a time, that's an amazing source. And you have some gym content, which is really motivating to see. You very much encompass the idea of self-defense and defense of self. So I absolutely love that. And then this is really the last question I have for today, but like I mentioned earlier and before the podcast started, feel free to go off about anything you like to talk about. I try to bring this up as much as I can to get the various opinions of guest speakers. And it's always cool when they say like similar things. It's like, man, that must be true then, all these great resources. So when it comes to women that are wanting to start their first self-defense journey, do you have a particular style of self-defense you recommend? I'm guessing it's BJJ, and it may be striking as well, weapons, anything like that you would like to kind of recommend?
Man, there's so much there. I started in the gun world. I'm actually not so certain that's the place to start, but it's super fun. And if that's what, you want to do, please do that. When it comes to sort of like the hands-on stuff, I'm a true believer in jiu-jitsu. I think that BJJ is going to be your biggest return for your least investment. What I would love every woman who's interested in being able to protect themselves to do is go spend 3 or 6 months in a jiu-jitsu gym. Go like twice a week, once or twice a week for 3 or 6 months. And then you can give up. I'm giving you permission to not keep going. You can go for a semester, basically. Go for a college semester or half a year. Go 1 or 2 times a week, just like any other fitness class. I think that would be enough to make you so strong, so able to fight off so many different kinds of attackers and not be afraid in so many ways for an investment of what a college, it's a college class. That's all you need. I suspect by then a lot of you will decide that you want to keep going. But if you don't, that's okay too. You'll still have a lot. And I think that given size differential and skill differential and things like that, that's going to be your best bang for the buck. Striking's hard when you're little.
That makes a lot of sense.
You know, we're small. A lot of us just don't have you've done Muay Thai. You know how hard it is to put power behind a strike. And especially when you're small against the large opponent.
I will say I am almost 5'10", and I weigh about 190 pounds. So I don't think I I don't think I represent the majority of women when it comes to that. That's why I have like you and Tessa of Armed and Styled and Michelle to recommend women that do have, smaller frames to go see kind of like those modes of concealed carry. Not that it like changes drastically, but even like as someone who at the time I was 160, I weighed 160 and was the same height, if not maybe like a baby bit shorter. And yes, it really was hard compared to the men that trained and were cage fighters and had just like tree trunks for legs, man, like, yes, I do remember having to put my all into it to the point where like I could feel like my muscles in places I hadn't before. And a point I'd like to add to what you said about jiu-jitsu is like, a lot of people don't recognize they don't have control over their bodies as much as like, you know what I mean? Like actually like moving your body in a way where you have to defend yourself is so different than the sitting and standing. And even like, if you're a weightlifter, like, yes. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Like if I get knocked off my feet, it's like automatic now. Like my elbows are in, my hands are up in front of my face, right? Like everybody who does jiu-jitsu does this. We don't have to teach jiu-jitsu for self-defense. You can go to a sport-oriented gym that only cares about competition. And at the end of 3 months, I guarantee you, somebody tries to push you down and lie on top of you. You're going to be like this. You're going to have your elbows in. You're going to have you're going to have made a frame. And that's the first step to being able to get them off you and get away from them. And I've done it to guys who literally weigh twice what I do. What I weigh. And that's kind of one of the reasons, like, yeah, I'm a jiu-jitsu true believer. I'm that annoying person that says everybody should take BJJ. But I will be that person who says you can take BJJ for 3 months and then quit if you want to. You will still have gotten enough to get very, very far in your self-defense journey.
Absolutely. Yeah, that reminds me, I remember anatomy in undergrad, just a little like sidebar, when animals, like we dissected rabbits and experimented on rats, like their arms, especially in like rigor mortis, their serratus ventralis muscles are so tight that they keep in, but because they're normally like that and they're large muscles, but we don't use those a lot as human beings in our everyday life, like those lats and the equivalent of the serratus ventralis. I think it's the serratus anterior, but we don't use those muscles commonly. So like activating them in martial arts is so different, especially jiu-jitsu, and also like bringing your feet in,
all like curl up in a little ball.
That exactly, yes, all of that is so automatic now. And I've just to kind of go last little tangent here. Even when my fiance will like attack me with tickles, like I still jump into jiu-jitsu mode, and that's how I know it's stuck with me. Because sometimes I get down and I'm like, man, I really miss jiu-jitsu. I feel like an imposter telling women to do this, and then I don't train. And then he'll just like start play attacking me, like, like tickle wise and not anything weird. And I'll just like pop up into like what I normally do.
Let me ask you something. How long did it take for you to get your blue belt?
It took me about 2.5 years. And I did take, I would say 3 months off because I paused to go and study abroad in Spain. And I took some time to focus more on Muay Thai. So yeah, 2.5 years. I do feel like I worked for it. I was surprised when I got it. I kind of felt like I probably deserved to train like 3 or 6 months more than I had, just because I think I had like just gotten back from Spain, and then like 3 months later they promoted me. And I had done a little jiu-jitsu in Spain. I actually went and trained Muay Thai with a group of people that did some groundwork there. So instead of like being part of the party scene, I was training as much as I could because I wanted to be with it when I came back. But they promoted me kind of quickly, and there's some stuff about that particular gym. I think a lot of it was popularity based, unfortunately. So not saying I was popular, but like I hung out with those people.
So
they were family to me, and
which isn't
anyway,
it's a pretty reasonable chunk of somebody's life, right? 2 or 3 years. How long has it been since you've been doing jiu-jitsu regularly?
Regularly. Ugh. Okay, got my nose job in August. There's no sexy way to say it. Nose job in August of we're currently in 23, just in 22, 21. So I would say July of 2021.
Almost as long as it took you to get your blue belt, right? And your body still remembers. Right. So, if you're listening along, you're like, I don't know if it's worth it. I don't want to do this for the rest of my life, so I'm well trained, blah, blah, blah. You put in 2.5 years. You know, I think I got my blue belt in a year and a half, 2 years, something like that, without breaks. And that's pretty common, somewhere between 1.5, 2.5 years. A lot of people get a blue belt, right?
Okay, cool. That's good to know.
Now, 2.5 years later, I'm doing my math right too. 2.5 years later, your body still remembers how to do all of these things. I don't know about you. I think that was a pretty good time investment that you made. And it's something that's going to keep sticking with you over time. And that's going to do a lot better for you than that weekend 2-day self-defense seminar that you definitely don't remember right now.
100%. Absolutely. Yes. Absolutely. I mean, I have some battle scars from the whelps of the sim guns at
mine is right here.
So yeah. Right. Yep. It's always interesting to see. Yep, absolutely. Oh man. Well, Annette, I have enjoyed this conversation so much. We are coming up to about time for the episode. So I would love, before we close out, first of all, if there's anything you didn't get to talk about, take your time. But I always love my guest speakers to say like 1 or 2 things as like a piece of advice or just some encouragement to anyone listening before we close out.
I'm going to try to be pithy here and, say something really wise. Here's something for you. You can have it all. You can have it all. So don't compromise. It might take you a little bit longer. You might have to work for it. It might be hard, but you can have it all.
I love that. Thank you. I feel like I needed to hear that.
Isn't that having it all?
Yes. Exactly. That's a good point. That was very wise. Oh my goodness. Thank you for sharing that. Yes. And if you listen to this episode later on and you're like, man, I wish I had talked about this more, or I forgot to say this, would love to have you back on.
Super enjoyed this.
No worries there.
This has been a lot of fun and super interesting. So thank you very much for inviting me on.
Absolutely. Thank you. And for anyone who wants to see her cat and those cert pistols and blue guns, you can become a Patreon member. I post the full episodes there. And then I will post that as well on the podcast highlights on Instagram. So be sure to check that out. We're also on TikTok at She Shield Pod for both of those. If you would like to find Annette and on her own resources, of course, those will be linked in the show notes, the notes below the title. A special thank you to Sigetta Gear, the official sponsor of She Shield, and my favorite personal concealed carry belt is by them. So for duty gear and concealed carry gear, you can use code SheShield10 for 10% off your Sigetta Gear order and to support the pod. All resources mentioned are linked. And if you or anyone you know is struggling with mental health, you can look into Hold My Guns organization. They are a resource for gun owners who need a safe storage space for their firearms in a time of need or crisis. If you like the pod, you can help by liking, subscribing, and leaving a review. In the meantime, thank you for listening and stay safe and stay vigilant.